Well, thank you for remaining with us. As you have seen there, Dini Konu, a lecturer, journalist and researcher, joins us this morning to discuss the screening proper of the nominees yesterday. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much.
Well, you may want to, first of all, talk about the process.
Yes, please.
You are not a doctor.
No,
you are
no,
a journalist.
no,
By the way, it's also unfortunate to know that Adeni Adeyemi, a journalist with...
died. That's unfortunate. I think it also speaks to the issue of to make provisions for journalists. Many journalists have needs that are not catered to. And I think it's key for that to be, an instructive point where provisions are made in terms of welfare and specifically medical care, which is important for them. Journalists don't have holidays. They work every day of the week, 35 days a year, so it means it's important to give them the needful care.
Perhaps also to mention that the words from the former president of the Senate and the majority leader in the current assembly speaks volumes of their knowledge of the individual involved here.
That's true.
And being a thoroughbred and almost chasing everything. The Kabiyesi was talking about the stress that politicians go through, not knowing the extent to which journalists themselves have to go to get the jobs done.
Yeah, the reality is I think we really need to conscientize people regarding health. Do not forget first that we have a lot of medical professionals moving out of the country. So those that would have formed the crop of those sensitizing and giving information regarding this in different places as their corporate social responsibility services are no more in the country. So there's a mindset of money for service, money for value delivered. I think in every workplace, even if you've got 5 members of staff, it's key for them to know the basics, particularly when it comes to resuscitating persons. Then I observed also at the assembly, they don't have water available because all the while the Senate president was calling for water and sugar. And at the same time, it shows that such welfare should have certain persons available to do it. Then I didn't see anywhere you've got first aid kit. It's also very important.
I was gonna head there.
So if you go to
response.
Yes, please. So some things should have actually helped at that point. Then you could, according to what the doctor said, everyone was crowded. You need to give space when somebody faints so that there will be enough oxygen. But I think we've taken this as a lesson, and it's important to move forward from there.
All right, let's go to the nitty-gritty. The process you saw,
yes,
the lady from Kwara,
yes,
the man from Lagos, and the one from Kaduna. What do you make of the questioning, the process of the screening?
Well, I'd like to say first that the persons that were nominated by the president, from the resume that I read about and the video that I saw, are qualified to hold that positions. Let me say that first, so we don't dispute over if they are qualified or not. But let's understand that this
qualified based on the paper,
based
or
on the
qualified
paper,
on performance.
Based on the paper, we are looking at the paper.
Based on qualification.
The qualification first, because we'd have to give them time to be in the office before we do the second level assessment.
But it's another blind screening, so to speak, because we're only assuming that they're coming to fill the offices of Minister of Youth, Minister of State for Youth.
Yes, and of course the other ministry. I think that should be environment or something, or power, but environment. Now, let's just, for now, look at, for instance, if anybody gets employed based on what you brought, that is why there is room for you to grow at respective workplaces, because employment is your qualifications, promotion is for your performances. So let's say right now, they have actually scaled the first hurdle of employment, which has to do with the qualifications. So promotion, which would often be an assessment of, that comes from us, and of course from the person who appointed them, will be coming later. Don't forget that the former president actually gave the sack to 2 ministers, Nanono and the former one who was in the Ministry of Power, Nanono Agriculture, because they didn't perform well. They had the qualifications. But there's something that I like lawmakers to understand. Those ministers are not to serve in their constituency. They're to serve the Nigerian people. And it is ridiculous to have lawmakers say, is a very good person, attended the same secondary school as my son. Those persons are going to serve in those capacities and give proper service to Nigerians. So when lawmakers who should understand the implications of poor performance of ministers are saying because people come from their own constituency, they should leave, I think it's really, really out of what they should do. And I think Nigerians should understand that that is why we have a lot of problems regarding the kind of services they render. Now, if your father belonged maybe in a university and you happen to want to do your viva, the presence of your father there wouldn't prevent you from analyzing whatever it is you presented in terms of your thesis. So for these persons, they've denied Nigerians first the opportunity of having a sneak peek into what their performances will look like. And I have to say that in terms of the responses to question, for instance, the man from Kaduna was slumped, I really would have heard much more about the capacity that he has, because they said he's an astute administrator. He was the former secretary to the government of Kaduna State. He had also, he's held very good positions. Don't forget, he has attended Administrative Staff College of Nigeria, ASCON. I wanted questions regarding those areas of expertise. He's traveled abroad. He also understands, a level of law. I really need questions, because we've had people with qualifications without the corresponding capacity in those areas, please.
But Mr. Kuno, is that not exactly the reason, these gaps that you have identified,
yes,
and
please,
the possibility of non-performance in the future, are those not the reasons that portfolios should be attached to, the resume of nominees before they head to screening?
Absolutely. You're very apt on that. And I think that the reason governance is a continuum is to look at the things that have not been done well. For instance, if you check the young woman from Kwara State, she has worked with government, she's worked with some non-governmental organizations, even international bodies. It means, therefore, that apart from being a medical doctor by training, she has actually gone through certain levels of trainings to gain expertise on maybe community service, developmental projects. And I think that they should really understand that being a medical doctor or having worked or having done a lot of social work doesn't make you automatically capable of handling the youths of this time. And I think it is also key that for you to have such connection and provide solution, you really must be connected to youth. I lecture at a university and I teach plenty of Nigerian youths. Even when I find myself in the classroom and I lecture, I evolve very advantageous psychological processes so that I can bring them in and make them part of what I do. So if you looked at the other person that is supposed to be maybe a minister of state, later on for youth, I think also that his initiative was not properly spelled out when the conversation started regarding, okay, let him take a question or two. The answers or the response he gave to how he's going to actually create solutions did not actually convince me. He didn't say much about it. He was told to go. I'm not in doubt of his paper qualification, but I'm in doubt of being able to translate that into feasible, positive, impactful result that we hope to see. So I think it is key for us to actually query the lawmaker, because primarily they're supposed to provide to us as Nigerians who voted them to office to be able to allow those that will occupy exalted offices to show that they can deliver. Number one, they came there with certain blueprints. You would have allowed them to at least take 5 times. After all, we pay them to do that. If you have to extend till 8 p.m., extend till 8 p.m. and get this job done. That's my business for them. As much as I will not query the qualifications of those people, sincerely, the process, very faulty, I have to say that.
Well, talking about that process,
yes, please.
A good number of people, just as Bukola has said, have thought, look, why don't we have them with the portfolios? But that doesn't happen. Perhaps also to reckon that, I think it was former President of Obasanjo, or was it Jonathan,
yes,
who had to shuffle ministries. So, okay, you were in sports, okay, go to labor.
Yeah.
Or you were in finance, go to budget and planning, and, just hypothesizing now. Could that be the reason why those portfolios are not being attached?
I think that's a reflection of what will result in poor competence. Or it's a reflection of the fact that you don't really know the people that should be in those offices. And I'm talking about those who shuffled. Obasanjo did. Okonjo-Iweala was in finance and was moved to interior. I believe, at that point in time. So the shuffling was very correct, as rightly referenced. I think that people have capacities and we've got areas of strength. And if something is said to be your areas of strength, you should be allowed to function in that office. Why do we have what is called underemployment? It is because your capacity is used less than the value you're able to give. I think it is very important for lawmakers, maybe those in the opposition party, to push for a possibility of a legislation that makes it compulsory.
Going to the next question that I want to ask about that set.
Yes, please.
What template would you recommend?
Okay.
Or a lineup would you recommend that before we will have the screening?
Yes, please.
These are the things that are going to happen at the screening, not just bow, take a bow and go.
Okay, in the first place, when you have people, just as they've already said, I think the issue of the man who slumped has become very important. And let me tell you here, nobody gives you employment in Lagos State, for instance, without your health certificate. You've got to get one so that you're certified okay to work.
That's as civil servant or not as political appointee?
As civil servant. So if government that employs you as civil servant describes that as a prerequisite, then I think anybody who takes up political appointment should also do so. After all, everybody is serving as Nigerians, they're not foreigners. But this is it. The first thing that I recommend is everybody who is to get into any political office, particularly the ministerial positions, should have requisite qualifications to go into that, which must reflect in their qualifications. Number two, when they get there, I think they should make that particular process very formal. The issue of saying the good people of this, it was practically a joke yesterday, especially when I think Jimo, I think Barrister Jimo or whatever, the one that owned a defunct newspaper, when he spoke from Ondo. When he spoke, he was practically just making eulogies without any seriousness attached to it. And I think that that is not the proper process. So first, all jokes must be aside apart from your qualifications. Secondly, everybody must answer at least 3 questions, 5 minutes each of those questions. And after those questions, you can actually ask another question for 3 minutes each. It must be a thorough process. If a democracy is modeled after thriving democracies, I think there are lessons for us to learn regarding people who occupy offices.
I was actually, my apologies.
2 things.
Okay, please.
Just one.
Yes, please.
I was actually expecting that you would tell us, okay, these are the things that, because, for instance, the question Bukola asked about portfolio.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it seemed that this particular
has
one, they came with the portfolios, and that's why the questions were perhaps specific. Excuse me, particularly to the Minister of State for Youth and the rest of them. So we know that they come with their qualifications.
That's one.
We know that they have to be screened.
Yes, please.
We have been talking about this even from, I think, the previous administration.
Yeah.
That when you nominate people, they should come with a portfolio so that we can ask them target-specific questions.
Fantastic. I think that to include in what must be done is to have permanent secretaries in this ministry be at the screening. While you're talking about lawmakers, I think it is key because the person that will be closest to work with in those ministries will be PEMSEX. And the years of expertise will make that person be able to question them, even if it is not on core administrative issues, but on the capacity of those people to function in those offices. So when you have, for instance, 3 lawmakers from an area, and the lawmakers are into maybe industrialization, maybe in chemical engineering, and the person is going to maybe the Ministry of Power, or maybe the Ministry of Housing, you should have somebody from that ministry who will be able to ask you that, for instance, this is the ministry that you will likely occupy. Can you tell us what is the percentile of the houses that have been built in the past 3 years? What is the difficulty in being able to get land? Because if we don't do these things, oftentimes it's going to be deja vu. The reason the former president had to sack 2 ministers was simply because of this. As a matter of fact, everybody who occupies an office should be able to interpret the vision of the person who has appointed you, because part of why the former president sacked Nanonu was he was veering off track of the president's vision for the Ministry of Agriculture.
Isn't it sufficient? My apologies, I know you want to come in. Isn't it sufficient at least that the National Assembly, that's one of the issues we were discussing before we came on air, that don't we have National Assembly members who are medical doctors? So isn't it sufficient that some of the people who are in the National Assembly, that's why it's the Committee of the Whole, isn't it sufficient that some of them are professionals in the areas to which some of these people are being...
Well, let's say this, that you may not actually have every profession represented in the lawmakers under 9 persons. So that could be, we should take cognizance of that. But you see, when you are representing the people, you are representing the people of your constituency in all areas. It means that a little knowledge here, a little knowledge here. Bearing in mind that you normally have your briefing ahead of the screening that takes place, should make you prepare. And that is why these lawmakers have special advisor on this and that. The lawyer should be able first to tell you, Your Excellency, sir, the person coming is going to be in this area. This is the person's area of capacity. The likely question should be from A, B, and C. And I think that's quite it up. And I also want us to understand that that screening didn't have up to the 1/3 of lawmakers who should be there. Because if you're talking about every screening, you cannot have excuses of not being present when those that be representing the country in ministerial capacity are to come to the floor. So we also have to know those who were not present to participate in that screening, because they have to give account of being absent at a screening for ministerial positions for the people of Nigeria, and of course because these people are representing those in this country. So that is also another conversation here.
Well, I wonder if you sense this certain level of fatigue in this particular screening process, because the main job has been done with the 45 ministers that have already been screened and inaugurated, and the lawmakers just decided to fulfill all righteousness, so to speak, with this particular screening. That's on the one hand.
Yes,
on the other hand, Ayo talked earlier on about, reshuffling that had been done by past administrations.
Yes,
don't you think we should interrogate that process to be sure that, that was done out of political consideration rather than any performance driven reasons? And, besides that as well, does it produce efficiency, so to speak, in ministry and in the performance of ministers?
Let me say this first. To the first question regarding the lethargy that was observed, I think it is key for us to help Nigerians understand that lawmakers are not doing us favors. They are doing us that particular thing that should make us see them as responsible to us. And that's why I talked about the number of those present for the screening. If you have one person to be screened, everybody should be there, because everybody gets sent the brief. The brief gets sent to them for them to be able to what? To be present and participate in the process. As a matter of fact, you may not even ask questions, but you make notes as a point of reminder if that particular ministerial nominee didn't deliver based on what the person has said. There are lots of retrospections that help to balance perspectives and conversations, especially at that level. When you're present at a place and you do not actually say a word, at least your presence here should allow you make note to enable you refer to those notes that you said this, but you're going away from that. In terms of the second part of the question, I think that it's a reflection of not even understanding if the person that gets into office is able to deliver. Because if you bring somebody into an office, you believe that this person is going to do what he or she has been appointed to do. But again, it also speaks to the understanding of the person who appoints them. Because you could want somebody in a particular role, you said it could either be for politics and not because of doing the job. And you're correct on that. Maybe you appointed somebody and your political party members are saying this position is juicy. Do not forget that every position, ministerial or not, has its own perks and privileges. It could be that they've been speaking to the person and say, no, you can't do this. Look at what is happening. And maybe after the tenure had expired or had rounded off, you have to replace the person, not because of incompetence. For instance, I didn't see reason why Konjo Iweala was taken away from the ministry. Not because she was incompetent, obviously for political favors, or the fact that the man feels this woman may be feeling that she's the all and all. Let me tell her I'm still the one in charge, and move away from there. And immediately somebody with capacity is taken away from a particular position, it is obvious that the person is going to be affected. Look at the Minister of Education the last time. I remember very clearly that the former Minister of Education, Adamu, had said at the beginning of what actually resulted in the strike actions that were repeated, that the monies owed the lecturers will be paid within that week. He lied, and he lied several times. I have record of what he said.
Well, you know, so many issues to raise about this, Mr. Kuno, because I mean, you're a journalist and researcher, so the questions are going to be endless for you.
Yes, but
at this time we have to really close.
But I need to just say Happy Teachers Day to everybody in my community. If I'm being,
we should be the ones telling you happy.
Well, let me tell others.
Adeniyi Kuno is a lecturer, journalist, and researcher, and he joined us this morning. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the privilege of coming here. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So we're back right after now to take on another issue. Do stay with us.